I don't know, this is either going to work or not work. And I relegated it to, if I feel this way at 1 month, the experiment's over, I'm pulling the plug and saying, thanks, no thanks, I don't think we're correct. Because then I was only out the few $100 difference between employee A and employees B pay. And so I had a game plan of what if, but I went into it wholeheartedly and passionately. She's it for me. I mean, she has professionalized the company. And I think it's decisions like that that take you north of 2 million and then eliminate some stress. I've never received a phone call, text message, or email about work since she started. So I have an off switch. Work doesn't come with me unless I decide to open my email.
Welcome back to another episode of The Pursuit of Purpose. My name is Chris Kiefer, and today I am joined by John McFarland. John started painting apartments in high school as a favor to his brother, and that accidental start turned into one of Michigan's most respected painting companies. And this year they're on track to do $12 million a year with a zero subcontractor model that's built entirely on culture and systems. So that is what we're here to talk about today. I'm very excited. John also was recently elected as a board member to the PCA, and he's just when I've every conversation that I've had with John, he is and his reputation. The culture and systems and processes around that always come up. So I'm very excited to talk about that today. But first of all, John, I just wanted to say thank you for carving out the time to do this. I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm excited.
So yeah, the accidental start in high school, that's a fun story. You want to just give us the glimpse into the very early days?
It was one of those things I didn't expect this to be my origin story at the time, but my father got a phone call from a fairly frantic older brother of mine who was in his early mid-20s. He had a second job managing a very small 70-unit apartment complex that gave him free rent and had painters that were not showing up all the time and were smoking pot in a unit, actually. And told my dad, hey, I need help. Can you help me with this? My dad, although he was in education, was handy and said, I can. Kind of looked over at me on the couch, if I remember correctly, and said, hey, a couple hours, get up. We're going to help your brother. He's got to paint an apartment. You're going to learn how to do something. And that's how that started. I spent a couple years working around, athletics, weaving in and out of workouts, doing a very below average job of painting apartments. I had to invoice the management firm. So I learned very early on about, procuring materials and ordering my paint and then making sure I sent in invoices so I got paid on time. And it was great. For a first job, I had a good amount of responsibility. I learned a lot, not technical painting craftsmanship very much. And then my first summer out of college, I came back and got a job with a painting contractor who was very typical of our industry, one-man show, fairly good craftsman, not super reliable, not organized, didn't have a good business. And he taught me the trade. I did that for a summer. And then a couple of years later, ended up, starting the company and launching the company. So that's kind of my origin story. I fell into it and then was trained my second summer out of college there by a guy who was a pretty proficient craftsman.
And your then third summer is when you started MacFarland painting?
Kind of, that would say there was about the other couple of years of college was a mix of side jobs and working for that company kind of part-time, 3 days a week. And then I did my own thing. Actually, really early on in the company's launch, I got a pretty good sized project and brought him on to kind of co-run it with me. And so that was interesting, kind of completing the circle that, now he was working with me on a project. And so a couple summers, after 4 years, and then, really started the company in about 2003. I got my residential builder's license in 2005. So the state of Michigan no longer requires a painting license. But even when they did, I went and got the full residential package. So totally capable of building homes from the ground up. And I've held that for about 21 years now.
Oh, I guess I have a bunch of assumptions, but I'll save those. Was there a clear point in the 20 plus years of you running this business that you identified culture as this is a thing we're investing heavily in, or I'm going to intentionally craft? Because I've heard it said everyone has a culture and everyone's building a culture. It's just a question of, are you doing it intentionally or not? And how does that fit into was this in the early days, this was something that you had picked up and seen and was passionate about from year 1 or 2, or was this you experience pain and realize we need to make a concerted effort to resolve or fix this?
That answers a little bit of both. So we had what I think was a good culture for the time. We were very hardworking. No one was going to outwork us early on. We problem solved everything. We took on projects that people didn't want. We did roof jobs in 10-degree weather and 100-degree weather. We did whole house resides that were very complex and frankly, we had no business doing. But our culture was whatever the client needs, we do. And it served us well for a bit. It wasn't until we had our second child about 2013 going into 14 that I needed to change something. And the problem with the culture was it was very dependent on me. And that's, I think, the biggest struggle when you look at a leader or a company. If that culture is only being upheld straight from the owner, it's not really culture. And so I had to make decisions at that time. I had a fantastic business coach who said, listen, I know the income looks good. You think you're making money. You're really not. And you are the bottleneck. Everything is dependent on you. Permits, design stuff, managing these projects. Is this what you want your life to be? And I said, no. And then the solution to that was try to design some systems that would allow what I believed in culturally to be accepted and owned and really taken on the backs and shoulders and heart of our staff. And so started to design some systems of pay and compensation and bonuses that really laid the foundation to have our staff behave as like owner operator mentality, not hourly employee mentality. And then we started to build and dial in and really polish what that culture was.
You touched on a word there, incentive. There's a Warren Buffett quote that's show me the incentive and I'll show you the behavior. And maybe you could also say, and I'll show you the culture in your case. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So like our pay system very, very quickly is kind of a percentage of a project, for lack of a better explanation. And I can talk on this for hours and we're limited on time. I know that, but that percentage is staying. So picture that to be a fixed cost for Chris. You're going to paint these 5 rooms and let's say that's $650 labor. Over time, Chris, you get much more attentive to, is the van set up? Is the customer informed of what I'm doing? Do I have the right materials? If I go to the store, you're actually costing yourself. And that's how we start to break down and coach these elements to our team members if they're management or new to the company and lower on the totem pole of like, that's $600 is yours. That's what you're getting paid. Do you want to draw that down with your hourly production to drive to the paint store and wait in line? Or do you want to order all of next week's paint and have it delivered? We institutionalize the pay system, which then allows us to get a receptive audience about finding ways to game it. And we use that language. I use that language. I want you to make as much money as possible. Let's game the system that I created. So count on vendors for deliveries. Why would you drive to a store and pick stuff up? Have everything you might possibly need in a van. A trip to Home Depot mid-project may cost you an hour or two at a time. You could have painted 5 door slabs in that time. One pays you money, the other one costs you money. And so I think the pay system being that foundation, now we really get to look at dialing in and coaching up some behaviors that maybe aren't kind of the first thing on people's mind when they're an employee. If you haven't owned a company, that risk reward is not a space you've lived in. And we can, in a fairly safe environment, create some risk reward with where they become highly organized, very forward thinking, very problem, solving mentality. And the customer as a byproduct gets a better experience because they feel like they're dealing with a very small company where this is the owner operator and maybe an assistant, but it's a team for, in our case, of nearly 100 staff.
When did you adopt that? Like at what time in the history?
We've paid in that model for, I think it's going on year 13 now. So it was maybe 6 to 12 months after the business coach had me convinced to cut the business in half and get rid of a lot of the remodeling. We did a lot of kitchen and bath remodeling and we did a nice job of it. So I cut the business in half in 2014 to really focus on the bread and butter, the thing that I thought we could replicate, which was painting projects are a little more streamlined than remodeling in terms of variables. So I took that ego hit, cut it in half, got over it, and then began to kind of build this back up. And we've grown with some service offerings. We get outside of painting a good bit now, but it's all possible because of that pay model and kind of that foundation. Well, we're really big, with our CRM and notes. So we require our estimators to do a good bit of homework. We're expecting, a dozen or 2 dozen pictures for a fairly straightforward paint project. We want to be able to talk to the homeowners and say, hey, I noticed we're painting in the dining room. There's a china hutch there. When you remove that stuff out of the china hutch so I can, paint that space and do that, please don't put it on the dining room table because I also see an escutcheon plate or a ceiling repair above that. And I don't want to work over potentially your grandmother's china. So systemized, we have a ton of pictures. It allows the crew to walk into a home and know what they're doing. So we're not asking, hey, Chris, nice to meet you. I'm John. What are we painting today? Where are we starting? We've done that homework. So that starts with our sales staff really getting good notes, detailed notes. We have a ton of goofy little hacks, is what I'll call them. Like our quotes are written in the order of operations on an interior paint job. So even if a client wants to talk to us about this room and go this way and kind of get us off track, we do interior paints top to bottom, inside and out. We want to do upstairs bedrooms, then the hallways, downstairs bedrooms, hallways, and work our way out the front door, out the garage. Our quote's going to be written in that order. And then when our field staff does their week before phone calls, they're saying, hey, you have, 15 rooms of line items here. Make some mental lines. We're going to be, Tuesday we'll be done with about the first 5. Thursday we'll be done with the next 5. Friday we'll finish the other ones and we'll be out of your way so that there's not disorganization. So we try to institute as many of those just set it and forget it philosophies as we can.
That's a good idea. So just like visually laying things out internally, you guys have a process that you could do whatever you want, but you're thinking at like, how can I most easily explain the process to a customer? And then I'm assuming the sales rep educates on that a little bit. Like, no, actually, Mrs. Smith, just take me to the farthest room from the front door and let's start there and work backwards. So they're hearing it there, and then they're hearing it on the pre-job call probably. And then there's just like lots of those little things are all coming together and reinforcing.
Yeah, and it just makes it automated. Sales knows what operations is going to say and what their scripts are. We do have loose scripts and some checklists for those phone call conversations, but homeowners are different and they're very good at kind of veering off course. And this room's really important, so they want to drag us into there and talk about that. And so we try to slow that down and really control that. One thing we teach all of our people on, and this just happened a couple of weeks ago. We've had a guy who's been here about 2 years. No experience to painting before he came here. A lot of potential, like him a lot. Very, very smart. Gets along great with customers. And we kind of ran some math and figured that Justin's been a part of 400 paint projects in that 2 years. So now and he's a little shy and introverted. So now we have to bolster him up and say, you've done this 400 times. Our most affluent homeowners who have moved homes and done renovation projects, they might have done a dozen projects in their life. You can do that in a month. So how this is going to work best for them. You need to be confident and say, listen, I understand that's important. We can still get that done by the end of the week. To me, I want to start and finish these jobs and have your kids sleeping back in their bed at the end of the day today. Do you trust me enough to let me run point on this? And somebody who's fairly young and doesn't have a ton of life experience is an expert on articulating what we do. And so we coach those people up on, let them know this is our project in your home. And if we have that relationship, this will go much smoother for you. We do this day in and day out, so trust us.
I love that. Yeah. And it's crazy how those reframes for the individual employee is like this confidence unlock in different areas. It's like when you actually, yeah, you're right. I didn't realize that
Yeah, he's been a part of 400 projects, startup and close downs in some capacity. A lot of them not being the point person, right? And that's what we're trying to do is have him be the go-to in-home leader of a project. But you've seen it 400 times. You know what worked well and what didn't. You know where maybe we didn't communicate as well and where you got to be thorough. And for us, creating some of that, a little stoking up of some ego allows that culture to kind of permeate that team where Justin's confident, the clients are confident, the team that's listening to him is confident. And if he has to say, hey guys, I've done this 400 times, a new employee's like, wow, okay, you have some reps. We're going to pay attention.
You mentioned in our discussion earlier, the culture without micromanagement. What does that mean, or why bring that up, or what's the important part there?
What's unsexy in a lot of businesses and trade businesses and paint kind of at the apex of that are you do a ton with marketing because it makes you money. So you have a lot of content that's available to us on marketing and sales process, and there's stuff on operation, and there's stuff on craftsmanship and applying paint. And I think culture is often poorly represented or not represented enough, because it's hard to see the ROI on it. And it feels like if you're an owner operator, this is just going to be a lot of work. I'm going to be micromanaging. I'm going to be nitpicking, and I'm going to constantly be referring back to mission statements and things like that. So I like to try to implement a system that reinforces culture, stoke that up, and kind of let it run itself, because nothing is more de-energizing to me as a human than micromanaging. And the best example I have, in our pay system, since they're paid for performance and they're paid kind of that lump sum chunk of a job, Chris, you're late a couple days a week, and we like you an awful lot, but you're late. What we're going to do culturally, the guys are just going to leave and go to the job. They're going to get in the van and go to the job, and you'll show up and you'll call and say, "Hey, where is everybody?" We'll say, "Hey man, we left. Drive yourself to the job." Now Chris's time doesn't start until he gets to the job. He's burning his own gas to get there instead of my van. And if it happens again in rapid succession, they're going to remove you from the bonus system, because they're shuffling, wondering, can we even count on Chris to show up? He has a lot of issues. He's got to leave early. He comes late. We're throwing the lion's share of executing this project on our back. I don't think Chris is part of the bonus system, which is really cool, because it kind of, inmates run the asylum is a phrase that I like. It doesn't fit great in this example, but the next Thursday when you walk in and you're 5 minutes late, your head's down, we don't need to tell you that you're out of the bonus system. You're still our guy. You're still a good guy. You got stuff going on. So we're going to keep you employed, but we're not going to try to give you that 20% targeted bonus. And you know it. And at some point, you're going to have this realization, either on your own or with us running math and showing you how much money that 5 minute, 10 minute late behavior has cost you. It's thousands of dollars. We've had people lose several $100s in a month because they were removed from the bonus system for being late or last minute call offs or things that were not family emergencies. And for us, that doesn't take micromanagement. The expectations of the team. We don't have to give you tongue lashings and get all over you or have you sign this. We might have you sign it as documentation, but you know what it says before we even have a conversation.
What's the visibility that they have into, like, I'm familiar with softwares like Protiv or things like that. Do I know as the employee? Because I love like the gamification, but it's like the what you measure, you treasure, and things like that. Having a dashboard. Does every employee see, okay, this project is this much, this is how many hours, if we can do it in this amount of time, like how in front of them is that information on every project?
Very. They run that math. We don't, management, their project managers don't run the math on what the production should be. If it's a 60-hour job, what that looks like, or if they creep to 65, where that starts to reduce their hourly production pay. The lower end crew people run that math because we need them to understand it. The guys at the top of the totem pole on a project have lived this for several years. They get it inside and out. To get buy-in, we need some lower end guys to run that math and know it to prep for a job. Can we do this in 60 hours? Is that possible? Or, hey, we're good up to 70. We start looking like we're going to get close to 70. We might need to really rethink this. And then we score that throughout the entire company. All of our operations team knows the per job production of every other operations team. It's for everyone's accessibility.
And the per job production is hour revenue per hour,
Yeah, revenue per hour.
per man hour.
It's per man hour. Yep. Yeah, throttled down to man hour. Sorted by salesperson, sorted by, division manager, we call them. I have 3 of them. They run large teams. And then sorted by project supervisor, which would be more of a classical project manager, but generally on-site role for us. And we can sort it by any one of those fields to see if there's a pattern. This way, I feel like I'm just getting bad jobs and I had a poorly written estimate and woe is me, the sky is falling. I can go and look at 50 other jobs that were done last week and be like, man, everyone else is having success, but not me. Maybe I'm going to the store. Maybe I don't have my van set up. Maybe I'm not doing a really good team walkthrough or client walkthrough. I'm getting a call back. This is probably a me issue. So
you show, that's awesome. You're showing full, like anyone in the company can see anyone else's stats basically.
absolutely. Has
I
to.
love that.
For us, it doesn't work without it. We're open book in that way.
What is the word? Feather in the hat, whatever, onto like not micromanaging. It just squashes like, well, like, it's not fair. Really? Show me why it's not fair. Go do your homework, look through our dashboard and tell me what looks off, right?
Yeah, and there's a little spot to put feedback on that with notes. And when we have a team, and it happens, right? These are people we're dealing with. They have bad stretches and a bad week or two. When there's some of the notes that we get to explain a poor job performance would be, client wasn't ready for our arrival. Okay, well, you made the week before phone call. So the client was told at the sales appointment, the client was told at the booking confirmation with an attachment, but that last ditch, let me get Chris Kiefer to get his house ready for us to show up Monday morning. That call happens Thursday after 3 p.m. I like Thursday. People are receptive to answering it. If you get a voicemail, we got Friday to catch them. So that's very intentional. And we're going to say, hey, Chris, I'm looking at these pictures. Please, these couple bedrooms look pretty jammed up. Can you get some nightstands out of the room? Can you move that dresser? We'll move the bed and do these things. So if they say, client wasn't prepared for me, they're really just admitting I did a poor job of following up the client. And when I open up those job notes and look, I often see left voicemail confirming Monday arrival. Well, that means nothing. I need to speak with you and have a dialogue, because what we get more compliant homeowners who then do a little extra. You find time to take down your window treatments, which we just don't really like messing with. You move some stuff out of the room. You get the closets a little more cleaned out. You might take the pictures off the wall well before our arrival. We're giving you that weekend to prep for us. We're being very compassionate and understanding. We're asking a lot from the client to get ready for us. And so we're just going to kind of say, Chris, I understand I'm asking you for a lot, but your paint project will go better. Your kids will sleep in their rooms faster if on Saturday and Sunday you can find time to do these 5 or 6 things. Is that good with you? And you say, oh, yeah, absolutely. So they end up kind of reporting themselves out and saying client wasn't ready for the job. And then we do a little digging as we do. And we say, okay, well, the break in the system was back here. The estimator was there 2 months ago. They looked at it. They scheduled this job 4 weeks out. They don't remember all those conversations the estimator had. They didn't really read our booking confirmation that says client responsibilities. They didn't open their sales folder that has that in there. It's that last phone call because they frankly don't care about McFarland Painting or the estimator. But if I'm the guy coming to actually apply the product on your walls, it's very important that the customer and that individual have a great relationship. And I need you to kind of be my assistant with getting me prepared to paint your house. That stuff is highly visible with us. That report will actually have those notes that go through. So if someone has a bad day and writes kind of a whiny note or an unprofessional note, it gets transcribed as is. We're not going to sugarcoat it. If it's cussing out an estimator or a teammate, it goes in as is.
And then do you do group reviews of that in like different sales meetings and like, or is it like, how do you break up cause I feel like a problem that a lot of companies have is that you make these dashboards and reports and then you don't have a time to look at it or like make changes on the behavior or do things differently because of it.
It's not quite every week, but it's every other week for sure. The sales team brings them up and looks at them. Now the sales members have gone through it individually. They're graded on that. So in our jobs, we have enough team members that if a salesperson is missing or undervaluing prep or a line item and not pricing it well, we'll see that in an hour or two. Reduction in hourly production over the course of a year is substantial from a salesman. So we want those to be as tight as we can. The operations staff, they go through those almost every week at their weekly team meetings. These groups are meeting every week. They're pulling that up. And they're going to have some winners and some losers, but our target is that they're getting paid 80 or 20% above their base hourly rate in that bonus system. And so if it's humming right around there, 20, 23, 24%, we're not going to have discussions about it. If it starts to get to 20 or under, we're going to bring it up and deep dive the failure jobs. And if it's operating wildly above 24, 25%, we're going to highlight those ones and say, what are you guys doing? This is like fantastic stuff. Do you know something we don't know? Have you discovered a new hack on how to paint that house, or how are you guys running so efficient? And so they do that biweekly, because I do think in order to cement the behaviors that drive that, people just backslide. And so you need to kind of have reminders and you need to share some tips. And so that happens biweekly.
What about I feel like it's been disproven over and over again. So I'm aware of this, but I feel like the most common thing I hear with the pay for performance coming from people that don't use it, because the business owners that do have already gone through this. But I guess I'll ask you, what's the biggest concern that a owner that doesn't do pay for performance is throwing up as the reason they're worried about trying it?
The only thing that's legitimate, and I really mean this, I don't mean to be hyperbolic. I think the only thing that's the legitimate concern is if you don't know your numbers well enough to start with the system, it could be inaccurate. There could be some inaccuracy in that. So one of the simplest ways in my mind, because a lot of estimating softwares do this, it says the production rate on this is 80 hours. Did you just pay 80 hours? If we finish it in 71, we get 9 hours free. You're going to pay 80 hours. Rolling this out takes some time. You have to have the right people. I will tell you, we have a lot of good painters in our area that come for a trial day and maybe work a week with us. And it's like, you're great, but not for us. You're not wired like an owner mentality a little bit. We do really well with people that own a business and they had themselves in an employer too and just got really sick of the grind and the evening estimates and the weekend typing and paperwork. Those people fall into our system really well. It's like, I only have to do a third of the hats I was wearing and you're going to pay me for my performance. I was paid kind of the reverse of this. I tried to be super efficient so there was money for me at the end of the day, and I didn't lose my hat on a job. And now you're saying I'm getting this hourly pay and then I can get this bonus. So, for us, I think that's about the only legitimate.
What I was thinking, what I've heard a lot is they're worried that guys are going to cut corners in order to get the job done faster.
We see that in very, very small doses for a short period of time. And the easiest way to kind of work that out of somebody that might be, I use the term gambling minutes for hours, is show what a callback cost, because that's coming out of the same labor pool. So you and I worked on a job for 5 days. We're happy. Average production paid us $34 an hour, which is a very typical number for us. We produced somewhere north of $110 to $120 an hour on the job sites. We get paid this $34 an hour. We feel good. Homeowner calls back and says, gosh, hey, Chris, John, behind that master bedroom door was left open and it looks a little light. And I noticed this cut-in isn't great. And we drive back there and this drywall patch needs a little bit. We're driving half an hour. We're setting up. We're putting on paint. We're watching paint dry. We're watching mud dry. We're doing that. That type of work probably would have been 4 to 5 minutes when we had the material out and it was wet last week. And now it's 2.5 hours of time. So we'll say, sorry, Chris and John, your job did pay you $34 an hour. That callback took you down to 31. And then we'll extrapolate that. If we make the same mistake 5 days a week over the course of a year, this is what that actually equates to you. Because some people, the math per hour makes sense. Some you need to give them a yearly total cost. And we often try to do both. And then even try to scale it back to like, what if I told you I would give you a brand new lease on a Yukon? This is $1,200 a month. Chris, what if I told you I'd give you that? Like, oh, this sounds great. Like, fantastic. You cost yourself more than that by being removed from the bonus system from being late. Or you cost yourself more than that because you had 10% callback touch-up rate for really knick-knack, tiny, small stuff. But the drive time and the setup murdered you. And then we get to teach you about opportunity cost. And if you say, Chris, you lost your Yukon, that's a tangible thing you can picture yourself riding in, where maybe that $1 or $2 an hour didn't quite hit home the same rate, right?
That's awesome. What was the biggest cultural mistake that you made and how did you fix it?
And there's been a few. I think the biggest one that we did, and we came out of this a few years ago, was trying to fix a labor shortage problem with skilled people and just try to get finished products too fast. The experienced 20-year painter person, they're a little more independent day one. They generally don't last. There's a reason that they're available. And so we tried coming out of kind of COVID. We had a really large boom in business and everything was just taken off for us. And we got burned a lot by the lifelong painter that was a problem and ran off some young people, didn't want to train, stuck in their ways, knew everything. And so we've been probably self-limiting on our hiring, where we technically by our sales, we could hire some more folks so that we're getting younger people that are smart and coachable and trainable. And we can teach painting. It's very, very difficult for us to teach, how to communicate effectively to a client and how to give a client a good experience, or how to coach and lead a teammate that maybe isn't as skilled as them. Um, Teaching paint is actually one of the easiest things that we do. In fact, our training program for training to paint is pretty pedestrian because of everything we do. I think it's the simplest.
So how did you recover from just like, well, we're not going to hire these people anymore?
We had a couple big catastrophic failures where we had to let people go in the middle of the summer and then let the schedule go from, at that time, it went from like 9 or 10 weeks to 12 weeks out, which is just too long for residential repaint. We're mainly residential repaint guys, and 12 weeks an eternity for someone who wants the outside of their house painted, frankly. And we just said, it doesn't matter. We can't do it this way. We're making ourselves miserable trying to fix, Tom, the old school painter guy. I'd rather have Johnny, the 20-year-old guy that worked at College Hunks hauling junk, or was a assistant manager of a restaurant and is great with people and is looking to do a more active trade or work outside. And there was times that we went back on it. And that's why I think it took us a couple years to get it out of our system, because we thought, well, this guy seems a little different. We can probably fix him. So we implemented a product called AccuMax, which, everyone's familiar with disc generally. AccuMax isn't as well known. To me, it's a more streamlined version of disc a bit. And so we started doing some personality assessments to get a real good read on who we were getting in the building and if they were going to fit into the role we needed them to. And we just tolerated the schedule getting backed up. We're going to do this a little slower, but it's going to be better. And I'm terribly impatient, so that was very difficult.
When you are hiring, like, how do you hire for culture? So the AccuMax thing sounds like that is a tool that can help. Is there things that you listen for or you train your people to listen for that's like helps filter that?
For sure. So even before AccuMax, we want to kind of disqualify candidates, right? They're interested, they applied, they're in the room. We know that, right? So we want to maybe ruffle some feathers and have them kind of defend something. So we want to say, name a time you're part of a team that there was a failure. And you say, my, basketball team and, my best friend Tom missed a free throw. We lost in the state tournament or whatever that is. Okay, well, how did you handle that? I was part of a school project in college and I was the only one that did it and I had to do everything. And okay, those are little red flags. So we kind of did that before, but AccuMax has a very unique feature where it will actually script tons of questions
For that personality type?
Yeah, to say
Oh.
if you're somebody that we think maybe has a hard time working independent, you need a team. It's are you capable of working alone? Is there a time you did something on your own that you were uneasy with, right? And so it really makes this easy because we're not psychologists, we're not a professional HR company, and we need people or they wouldn't be a job posting out there. So our default is if you show up, you're hired, and we needed a way to kind of cool that down and temper us. I don't do interviews anymore because I'm a terrible interviewer. If you come in and you're conscious, hey man, I can motivate you to make a bunch of money. Let's go paint houses, right? And so I was responsible for those bad hires, right? 5, 6 years ago. I had to remove myself. I had to know myself well enough to be like, listen, I know it's your name, I know it's your company, but you do this poorly. You try to fix everybody and everything. Let's get somebody that's maybe a little more cynical and a little more slow and methodical with this and let them run this. And it's been a game changer.
All right. So 20 years in, what's the purpose behind McFarland Painting that keeps you building it and excited and motivated?
Yeah. I mean, we have kind of two tenets that we judge every decision on, and it's client satisfaction and employee success. And I want to have a company that is well respected in our community, that satisfies clients, that sets our employees up for success, and really trains and develops people to stick around. We're really blessed to have pretty long tenure here. I mean, we have a handful of people over 10 years, which is not terribly common in the trades. And to me, I like that. The biggest achievements of the company have been the amount of people having kids, second kids, third kids, buying their second home. I calculated, I think we had 8 babies last year in the company. So we're not interested in hiring the fly by night person that wants to buy a motorcycle and have an apartment and not be around. We want people to start a family. We want people to get married and experience these really holistic, fun life events. And we want to be the support system that they're comfortable coming to work. They know they're going to be well cared for. They have health insurance. They have 401k. And the trade off for that is we run a pretty demanding performance based accountability business. But it's the only way that we can afford the health insurance and the 401k and the new vans that don't break down and well compensating people. So my mission is just to continue and grow that footprint.
That's awesome. What would you tell a painter that's doing $2 million? They feel stuck in chaos, can't let go, don't know where to start.
Yeah, we're always the bottleneck, right? So if you're 2 million, do you have a salesperson or an operations person? You should have had an office person, or now maybe 1.5 at that number. You have to give up control. And if you're not capable of doing that, then you just need to understand you're relegated to that 2 million mark, and it might be a pretty stressful way to get there every single year. I dealt with a lot of stress and unease not being the guy for everything, and kind of having some specialists that were better at different things than me. And I think you need to take a shot with somebody that probably is a better operations mind than you might be, or a better salesperson, or is much better with bookkeeping and admin work. And that pay is going to make your stomach hurt a little bit when you're at that point. My right hand woman is retiring this year. She's been with me 11 years. It's somebody that came in and I was astonished at what she wanted to make for income. Then she told me she works 4 10s and doesn't work Fridays, never have, never will. And it was kind of take it or leave it. And it was a crossroads of either take a gamble and make this uncomfortable, or take the easy route and just find someone that might not be as dynamic. I've never second guessed hiring that person. At that moment I wasn't easy. I was trying to figure out how I was she's making 15 to 18,000 a year more than her predecessor for the same type of job. The company was still young, right? I had just cut it in half. There was a lot going on. And I said, I don't know, this is either going to work or not work. And I relegated it to, if I feel this way at 1 month, the experiment's over. I'm pulling the plug and saying, thanks, no thanks. I don't think we're correct. Because then I was only out the few $100 difference between employee A and employees B pay, and so I had a game plan of what if, but I went into it wholeheartedly and passionately. And she's it for me. I mean, she has professionalized the company. She carries the same culture that I have, probably actually at a more firm level at times. And that was a risky, I'm unsure, I don't know this is the right decision hire. And I think it's decisions like that take you north of 2 million and then eliminate some stress. Chris is her name. And I take several vacations for work and family. I have 4 kids now. I've never received a phone call, text message, or email about work since she started. So I have an off switch. If I take 5 or 6 weeks of vacation throughout the year, different things that we're doing, work doesn't come with me unless I decide to open my email, but no one texts, no one calls. And we did that when the company was pretty disorganized. And she just, I left on a Friday. She came in Monday and said, listen, no one contacts him. I will take it very personally. I will fire you myself, even though she didn't hardly know these folks, right? And she said, this is how we do this. He's gone. It's on us. Let's figure this out. And incredibly rewarding, because then I had some better work-life balance. I wasn't doing anything. I didn't feel alone and just buried all the time. But to get out of that, it takes some risk, on giving up control.
That's awesome. Moving to some wrap up questions here. What are the 3 book recommendations that you have for us?
Yeah. I mean, I like Extreme Ownership, Jocko Willenick. I like all things of that ilk because I try to design the company in a way like that would look like a special operations team in the military. That any one of our people could step in and do someone else's job. We're very dynamic that way. That book also resonates well with the culture of people I have in the building. Even office staff behave that way.
What's that book called? All Things?
Extreme Ownership.
Oh, I thought you said there Extreme Ownership in the second book, but you like.
Oh no.
Yeah, Extreme Ownership. Yeah, fantastic book and mindset. Got it. I thought you said All Things of that was the title.
Yeah. No, sorry. 12 Dysfunctions of a Team.
Mm.
Lencioni's another good one. I think that's kind of a more business-minded version of Will and Nick. You know what I mean? A little bit of just trying to sort out team dynamics is important. And then I go back to Good to Great. I've been pretty successful at moving people that have been with me for a while to a different position because they're a great person, but I had them in the wrong seat and I let them sit in the wrong seat and start to fail a little bit. You know, that uh, my operations manager's been with me a long time. It wasn't working in operations management anymore. I respected the heck out of him. You know, we took 2 weeks to think about what we wanted, sent him home, came back. He's been selling on the sales side for us for about a year and a half. And if he's not number one, he's number two in sales. He's way happier. I'm happier. It just took the guts to say, gosh, I think I have you in the wrong seat, man. And I think Good
Yeah.
to Great sets that tone still.
Yeah. Yeah. Jim Collins has a new book called What to Make of a Life, which is it's coming out in April. That I like his work is fantastic. And then movie or show suggestion for the audience.
I'm not a huge movie and show guy, much to my wife's chagrin. I'm an old school movie guy, and I gotta go with Godfather 2. I just watched it again. I just think there's a classic timelessness to those older movies that is not really present now. But my wife is trying to get me to do the whole Tyler Sheridan series, and we've done a couple. I did Lioness we watched. That was a pretty good show. I don't do the murder mystery dramas that she does and the 60 minutes horror stories. I can't do that.
You're talking about the 1974 with Al Pacino?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. And if someone wants to get in touch with you, what's your preferred method of contact?
Yeah, I mean, I treat my email like text message. So my email is just john@macfarlandpainting.com. LinkedIn works good. You know, social media messages are good too. But I generally respond to emails so fast, and I'm game to hop on a call and talk shop. This is my first podcast this week, but I had 4 other meetings with other people in the trades, just workshopping ideas and trading things back and forth. It's incredibly energizing to kind of share some of those new concepts and ideas. So I hope no one's a stranger.
That's awesome. Well, John, you're obviously just even being on only people that are giving and wanting to give back would join a board, like especially the PCA. So I know and I've heard how generous you are with your time and wanting to just pour into other painting owners and people that are trying to professionalize. And I also will say that I love the stat of how many babies the company had in the last 12 months. My wife and I have a big family ourselves, and it's just like, yeah, there's a lot of joy that comes from these little creatures that create a lot of pain and suffering and lack of sleep in their early years, but it's totally worth it.
Well, and just that we're able to balance, one was my marketing director. So she's a department head of one. And then our designer is going out on maternity leave in June, and she's a department of one. These are key positions that they're it. So it is disruptive when they go. And I want that for them, right? I want them to have families. I want them as many kids as they want. I really want them to return to work after 12 or 14 weeks for sure. But, and to me, that's kind of like, you see this with, economic stats, right? The kids and these other expenses and home purchases and things, it's an indicator of the health. And I think if we're providing a life that people can do those things, we know we're doing something right.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, we got so many more questions, but this was a good session on culture, and really appreciate you sharing your wisdom. And we'll be in touch.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
Thank you so much for listening. My name is Chris Kiefer, and my mission is to champion the relentless pursuit of purpose. And what that means to me is to be an example, a champion, someone that is in the trenches, working and showing and winning and trying and failing in how to pursue a deeper and more meaningful life with the people that I love, with my kids, with my friends, with our family, and also just be a champion and example of entrepreneurship and following my passion and doing what I believe I'm called to on this earth. And so if that inspires you in some way, please share this episode. If you want, like, subscribe, share, whatever, do all the stuff. It means the world to me to get this message and get these guests that I have out there. And if you're interested in any of the book recommendations or looking up other episodes, the movie list, you can visit my website, chriskiefer.com, for all the details on the show. And also check out the Boolean review software, as well as the Boolean automation consulting company that I own for home service businesses. So thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next episode.